Welcome back. So we are talking cheerfully about death. And the purpose, as I stated last week, is not to be morbid or morose, but to eke meaning and inspiration out of stories around the end of life. And if you recall, the verse that we used to kick off our studies was the verse from Kohelet, from Ecclesiastes, which says, Tov lalechet lebeit avel, milalechet lebeit mishteh. It's better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of celebration, a house of feasting. And why is it tov, better, good for you? It's good for you in the same way that, as I mentioned last week, when we come back from a funeral or from a shiva house, we really know what matters in our life. I'm a lot better of a person after thinking about what one New York Times author called eulogy characteristics or eulogy traits. What do I really want someone to say about me when I'm gone? So it's but to think in terms of what our purpose is. So what we saw last week, as we're beginning with Breshit, we're beginning with the beginning of the ends, the beginning of death in the Torah, was what we saw. First of all, the first death was very violent. Who was it? Cain killed Abel. But besides that very problematic death in Breshit is just a matter of life. Adam lived and died. His son Shet lived and died. Vayamot. And remember, we looked at the begats, the list of the generations, and it just says Vayamot, and he died, and he died, and he died, and he died. So today we'll look at the characters in the Torah whose deaths carry a lot of meaning. The first characters in the Torah whose deaths carry meaning, which are the characters of Sarah and Avraham. So that's what we're going to do with our time today. If we have a chance, we'll maybe take a peek at Isaac, at Yitzchak. We'll see how much we get to. And it's worth mentioning that in the interceding chapters, we did have a flood that wiped out the entire earth, save for Noah and his family. We're not going to spend time on that because really there's much more to be said about it than just about the death of all humanity, and not only all humanity, but all living beings. I guess I should say I just saw a poem which referred to the fish. We know that every animal died except for the fish. But you know what happened to the fish? Once the waters receded, these fish were left on dry land. That's when the fish died. I thought that was a real chap.
I want to say something.
Yes.
Well, first of all, first one that I'm better to go to Beit Avelim than Mishteh. It's people feel better when they give than when they take.
That's true. That's true. That it's better to go. I'm just going to repeat for the sake of anyone on the microphone. That it's better to go to a Beit Avel, a house of mourning, than a house of feasting, because you feel better when you give than when you take.
And also, now that you put it like you said it again, you repeat it. I thought, Vayamat. It's because these people were nobody. And Avraham had a story there, so they gave it no importance.
Of course.
These people we don't know anything about.
Of course. So it's a message about also the role that these characters play in the history of the Jewish nation. So if the Torah is the story of the Jewish nation, then everyone before Avraham is the backdrop, you're saying. And Vayamot, we have to know that they existed, but we get a little more detail about some of their lives. But Avraham, it's not only, we'll first read about Sarah. Sarah's death had great significance to the destiny of the Jewish people. Her death involved Avraham's acquiring a piece of land. That was the first piece of land that the Jewish people owned in the land of Canaan.
What I'm saying is that it's not necessarily that that's the way the Bible sees
death. Yeah.
It's just people, somebody else dies, too bad.
So it tells us about their role in in the story, in the text. It's not necessarily the way people died in their life in those days. That's what you're saying, historically. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Turn to page 106. This is chapter 23 of Breshit, Perek Chaf Gimel. And this is the passing of Sarah, our matriarch Sarah. How did Sarah die? This is a trick question. What does the text tell us? How did Sarah die? The text doesn't tell us. The text doesn't tell us that she died. What happened just before this? The Akedah, the binding of Isaac. And the Midrash says that when Sarah heard, again, the Midrash is filling in the gaps, giving us stories that aren't in the plain sense of the text. But when the Midrash heard, thank you. The Midrash tells us that when Sarah heard that her husband took her son to sacrifice him on the mountain, she died of a heart attack, essentially. It doesn't tell us, but what happens in the text is the Akedah happens. We're informed of the birth of Rivka. So in the aftermath of the Akedah, now that we know that Isaac has survived, we're told about his future mate. And then, page 106, Vayihiyu Chaye Sarah. The life of Sarah was 127 years old. So we don't know how she died, but what is very significant about Sarah's death is what happens after she died. So let's just read for a few verses here. The life of Sarah, and it's so poignant. At someone's death, we reflect on their life, right? So the years of the life of Sarah were 100 shana ve'esrim shana ve'sheva shanim, 127 shnei chaye Sarah, the years of her life. Vatamat Sarah bekiryat Arba hi Chevron be'eretz Canaan. We're told exactly where Sarah died. Were we told where Adam died? Were we told where anyone died until now? No. But the location is going to be significant. So we're told where she died. Yes, Naomi?
How do we know how much time elapsed between the Akedah and she died? Because there were other machines.
So according to this, we know that Sarah was 90 when Yitzchak was born. And so if you do the math, according to this Midrash, that means that this is when if it happened exactly now, when Sarah died, that means Yitzchak was 37 years old at the Akedah. He wasn't a little boy. It was 37 years later. And it doesn't tell us how much time elapsed, but the Midrash says it was that instant.
These years are not reliable anyways. People live to 600 years, 300 years.
We don't know what years meant.
Yeah.
I'm going to just take a year as the cycle of the sun, but we don't know. We can't know for sure. So she dies in this place, and until now we haven't had this either, that there's a survivor who mourns. Isn't that important to notice? So Sarah has a partner who mourns her passing. Vayavo Avraham lispod leSarah velivkota, to eulogize and cry over her. And after that, Vayakam Avraham al pnei meto, his dead. He stands from before his dead. So now a dead body belongs to someone. This is also the first time we have meto, his dead. When you have a mourner, you also have someone who takes ownership or responsibility for the body. Not to say that it didn't happen before, but the text didn't write it this way before. I know that's what you were saying. That we don't know.
It doesn't reflect the philosophy of the Bible
Exactly.
towards them.
But it reflects on the place of these characters in the Bible, the significance of their lives.
Yes.
So we know now Avraham and Sarah have had a relationship like this, and he is now going to take responsibility for burying her. It's the first burial we're told about. This is the first burial. So he approaches Bnei Chet, Lemor. We're not going to read every single word here, but this is an establishment of I am a stranger and I want to have achuzat kever, a burial site. Achuzah is a hold on the land, a stake in the land, an ownership in the land. So they say, okay, verse 6, שמענו אדוני נשיא אלוהים אתה בתוכנו, במבחר קברנו קבור את מתך. איש ממנו את קברו לא יכלה ממך מקבור מתך. You're very important to us, Avraham. Take the best of the best, prime real estate, whatever you want. Take that to bury your dead, mittecha, your dead. Again, the ownership of Sarah's body and the responsibility. It is. And the drama of the burial of Sarah is not necessarily about Sarah. What's it about? It's about Avraham owning a piece of the land. Avraham demonstrates the purchase. This becomes significant in the span of Jewish history because this is the first time we own a piece of the land. And the Torah even details that conversation. This is the place. Go to Ephron and let Ephron give me Ma'arat HaMachpelah, this particular burial site. And Ephron, verse 10. Well, let's go to verse 11. Verse 11, the top of page 108. 108 or 109. Ephron says, no, you don't have to purchase the land. Lo Adoni, shma'eni hasadeh natati lach. I'm giving you this field and the cave that's on it. V'hama'ara asher bo lecha netatiha. With generosity, I'm giving it to you. Le'enei b'nei ami, with witnesses. Netatiha lach kevor metecha. Go ahead, bury your dead. But Avraham says, no, I'd like to purchase it. So skip down. Abraham says, no, I'm giving you the price of the field. Verse 14, skip down to verse 14. In Hebrew, it's Yudalid. Vaya'an Ephron et Avraham le'morlo. So Ephron replies, Adoni shma'eni, eretz arba me'ot shekel kesef b'ni u'bincha mahi. Okay, so what's 400 shekel? Like he was ready to name a price. Take it. It's like, I sometimes think this is a little bit like the Middle Eastern ethic of hospitality. Come, stay, sit. No. Please, I insist. No. Please, I beg you, sit, have something to eat. Okay, I'll take 2 burgers and fries and a Coke. I had to learn this in the Moroccan culture. This is very strong, and my husband is half Moroccan, and I see it in that culture. That you're supposed to offer and refuse, offer and accept. I don't know that it's 3 times, but that's what I think of in this conversation. No. Take it for free. No, really, I insist. Okay, 400. Okay, and they make a deal, and Avraham, skipping down verse 19, V'achrechen kavar Avraham et Sarah ishto. Avraham buries Sarah, El Me'arat Sidei HaMachpelah, Al Pnei Mamrei, Hebron, Be'eretz Canaan. What do we get in detail? Again?
Location.
Exact location. This is where Sarah was buried. Very important. So, and Vayakam, and even an emphasis, verse 20, in this way, Vayakam hasadeh v'hama'ara asher bo le'Avraham le'achuzat kever. This is how the field and the cave was confirmed to Avraham as an estate, achuzah. Me'et b'nei Chet. It was transferred from the people of Chet.
We know where the cave is.
Right, so that's Me'arat HaMachpelah, the cave of Machpelah, which is in Hebron, which now is not only Abraham and Sarah, but also Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah. There's a midrash that even Adam and Eve were buried there. We don't have any proof of that.
A lot of imagination in Midrash.
Yes, I know you're a fan of, I don't know if you're a fan of midrash yet. You're on the fence.
It's fine.
But why would they put Adam and Eve into where the matriarchs and patriarchs are buried? Why would they even say that? To connect our story, our particular story, to the universal story of humanity. Mm-hmm. Adam and Eve are part of it too. Any thoughts or comments about the death of Sarah in this way? So this is the significance of the death of Sarah is in her burial. Okay. Ready?
It bothers me that they leave out a little bit significance of her life.
Right.
That everything is
Realistic.
materialistic.
We have lots about Sarah's life beforehand.
Yes.
We read all about Sarah and Hagar and the kids, and she wants a child. You know, we have lots of stories, but at her death there is an abruptness. Yeah, which might be also where that midrash can come out of. She died suddenly. She didn't know she was going to die. She must have died suddenly. There's no goodbye.
Everybody dies suddenly.
Everybody
Dies
dies.
suddenly.
Doesn't know when.
There's a moment of death. and
Yeah,
it's sudden.
yeah. But what we'll see, Avraham is zaken, gets
Yeah.
older, and knows that something has changed. Marilyn.
I believe this is a different style of writing. Before it's anecdotal, now it's documentary. Like, they're documents.
Yeah.
There's an historical fact, as we can understand it,
Mhm.
supposedly not subjective.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it sounds like a documenting or a record keeping of the acquisition of this land. So that's, I'm not saying anything about Sarah's life. I'm simply saying something about Sarah's death and its function in the Torah. Its place in the Torah is one of achuzat kever, an acquisition of the land.
Comparative to other deaths that we're going to study or we have of the men, is it similar or different?
I don't know that I would make this a gender thing.
Okay, so then
But-
other women?
But it is different. So she doesn't. You know what? Let's hold that question and let's think about it as we go through our other characters. Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead or back. Abraham got up to eulogize her,
Mm.
but there's no eulogy.
There's no text of the eulogy
There's no
of
eulogy.
Abraham.
And I beg to differ respectfully. I don't think we know enough about Sarah's life.
Mm.
We have a few details, but we really don't know who Sarah was. There were lots of issues in her life that don't get explored, and certainly at the eulogy, there is nothing. Later on, when we read about death, we see they were gathered unto their ancestors.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we can make the case, they were the ancestors,
Mhm.
but nevertheless, there's that, there's lacuna here. All of
I would
Sarah's
ask the
life-
question:
in Sarah's life
do we
and
know
Sarah's
Sarah?
life.
Do we know a lot about Sarah's life from her perspective at all,
No,
even during her life?
very little, very little. I mean, the two times that Abraham offered her, we have no insight into whether she was willing, whether she,
But we're not going to get that. So what you're saying is, even during Sarah's life, we come on in, ladies. We don't hear a lot from her, which is also how shall I say this? In someone's eulogy, we don't get their perspective either. We don't get to hear what they thought unless they've written their own. But
but we get more details.
But I like this. I like this also. This issue of perspective and her perspective and others' perspectives, and we don't get her perspective very much during her life. And after her death, you could say she's objectified. I don't know if you're not using that word, but in her death, she's objectified in the sense of her role in the drama of Jewish history is that now her body gets placed in the first landhold, the first
And
achuzah.
the important thing here is the real estate.
Right. Yeah.
Were there eulogies though at that time?
But it says he
Lispod.
got up to eulogize. Hesped
Yeah.
is a eulogy.
It wasn't a formal. People didn't eulogize formally the way we write something and deliver it at papermans and. But to eulogize is to speak about the person for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, right, he said it should file for sure.
He's saying Esha Chayil. Good. Okay, so let's move on to Avraham. Let's move on to Avraham. Sorry, I forgot to bookmark this before.
At our eulogies today, it's so important to talk about the person and every little thing they did when they got married. I mean, isn't it more important to talk words of Torah and something about, I don't know.
The understanding of the goal of a eulogy is to praise the person in their life, to praise their good deeds, I know when I officiate at funerals, I often say to the family, you're never going to say enough. You're never going to say everything, because this person, thank God, has lived a long life. And so the goal of the eulogy is just to get their essence, maybe give a couple of anecdotes. Some people do feel strongly about giving the life story, especially if it's someone who has an interesting story to tell, if they came here after the war or whatever it was. I don't think but eulogize doesn't mean tell their story. Eulogize means tell their merits, and it often is in light of words of Torah or something like that. It doesn't have to be.
But lispod, it's not necessarily to say eulogy. Lispod means that you mourn.
Lispod sarah velivkota. Livkota is to mourn, to cry. Lispod is to eulogize. So it's different from mourning, I think. Okay, so Avraham, look just briefly at the bottom of page 108. This is the beginning of chapter 24, Chaf Daled. And then we'll skip page 108 or 109. Okay. This is not where Abraham dies, but this is, going back to our aging class, this was so important because this is the first moment in the Torah where the word zaken is used. He became old, or he became an elder, if you want to say it really with reverence. Avraham zaken ba bayamim. I don't know if some of you might remember, there's a beautiful midrash in which Avraham says to God, please God, give me white hair. Mm-hmm. Because Avraham and his son Yitzchak looked so alike that people can't tell us apart, he said to God, and people don't know whom to respect. In other words, I need to look older so that people will respect and revere me, which is very different from what we do in our culture, which is pour hair dye in and get rid of the gray. He was begging for the gray. And it says that God crowned him with a gray head. Isn't that beautiful? Crowned him with gray hair so that people would respect and revere him. And that's why this text says, V'Avraham zaken ba bayamim. Ba bayamim, well on in years, is the number of years. Like, he's lived a long time now. But zaken is that he looked older, according to that midrash, because he asked to look older. So throw out all of your anti-wrinkle creams and hair dyes, because to look older, this is countercultural, of course, in our time, but to look older is a sign of distinction and demands respect.
We all agree.
Good. We earn every wrinkle. The Avraham zaken ba bayamim. So this is the first time also that someone feels the passage of their years, or at least that it's recorded that way, and that he's looking back. That Hashem beirach et Avraham bakol. God gave Avraham everything. And then he realizes the only thing he doesn't have yet is a daughter-in-law. And that's where this story then continues. So he has everything, but he's now looking toward continuity. He feels his job, his life is complete, and his job now is to secure the future. So we're not going to read the story of finding a wife for Isaac, but this is kind of the beginning of the end of Abraham's life. There's so much to say about this.
For the future,
but
now he's facing death.
Right, exactly. He's at the end of his life. He's planning for the future, and when you look back and you see, I've done really well for myself. What's left to do, but to think about the future generations? So it's a real blessing that he feels that bracha beirachet Avraham bakol. So what was that?
That was after Sarah died.
Right, after Sarah died. Yeah. So he hasn't. He's had disappointment. He's had sadness. He's had suffering, but he feels blessed. Bakol. There's also. I'm throwing out all these midrashim, so take it or leave it. But there's a midrash that he had a daughter. To have everything, bakol, to feel blessed fully, is to have a daughter. He only had sons, and now he had a daughter. Okay. I have 3 daughters, so I like that I don't have any sons. Skip now to page 120, chapter 25. Before we get to the death of Avraham, there's a moment of, we had Avraham mourning Sarah, but now Yitzchak, the son, we see has also been mourning Sarah, and we don't know that until now, because now it says that he is comforted. So at the end of the story of finding the wife, finding Rivka, look at the top of the page, they meet. She's coming on the camel. Remember the whole story? The servant went out and found her, brings her back to Yitzchak, and verse Samech Zayin 67. Vayivi'eha Yitzchak ha'ohela Sarah imo. Isaac brings Rebecca, Rivka, into his mother's tent. Vayikach et Rivka v'tihilo leisha vaye'ehaveha. So he takes Rivka as a wife, and then he loves her. There's a great commentary here about marriage, and that love develops after the marriage. Not that you can't be infatuated at the beginning, but deeper love can develop after, because the order here is not what we might expect. And then Vayinachem Yitzchak acharei imo. Yitzchak is now comforted after his mother. So the only explanation, without saying anything strange about Yitzchak relating to his wife as a mother figure, so the only explanation is also that this is about the continuity. That Avraham has now found this wife for Yitzchak, and Yitzchak now understands there's a new Sarah in the family. And he brings her into his mother's tent, and that's where the Midrash says that the miracles of Sarah's tent, which had ceased when she died, now returned, that the Shabbat candles stayed lit, that the blessing was in the dough, that the cloud the cloud of God's presence hovered over the tent. That had been gone, and when Rivka comes, they return, symbolizing that Rivka is the new Sarah. Rivka is the next matriarch. So there's a comfort that Yitzchak finally feels after his mother's death. So that's just to note that before we move on to now Abraham's passing. Skip down to verse 7. So this is almost exactly parallel to the way that we talked about Sarah's death. We didn't have a lead up to Sarah's death, but we simply had, I'll read the exact words. Vayu Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah was 127 years old, Shnei Chaye Sarah. Here is also verse 7, Ve'ela Yemei Shnei Chaye Avraham Asher Chai. These are the days of the years of Abraham's life. 100 shana v'shiv'im shana v'chamesh shanim, 175 years. So this is important because later when we get to Yaakov is the only one who has a deathbed scene, a real deathbed scene at the end of his life. And that's where the Midrash says Yaakov was the first one to get sick before dying. He knew he was dying, which was a blessing because he got to say goodbye. Avraham had a task that he completed. He found his son a wife, but he doesn't have a deathbed. Isn't that interesting? So we just hear now he died. He lived 175 years. Verse 8, Vayigva vayamot Avraham b'seva tova zaken v'savea. Let's read all of these words. Vayigva, he expired. Vayamot, and he died. B'seva tova, a good old age. Zaken, which also means old, but it says mature here. Okay, elder. Savea, what's savea? Satisfied. Vaye asef elamav, that's the euphemism for he was gathered unto his people. He died, and we do have a burial. Who buried him?
His sons.
Yeah, not just one, and not just the other. Yitzchak and Yishmael. So even though Yishmael was cast out, and even though Yitzchak was the chosen one, they both bury their father. And where is it, of course? Me'arat ha'machpelah. Remember that one, El Sidei Ephron ben Zochar ha'chiti asher al panei Mamre. That same field, verse 10, Hasadeh asher kana Avraham me'etz bnei Chet. Remember, he purchased it rightfully from the people of Chet. Shama kubar Avraham v'Sarah ishto. And now they are buried side by side. You know, sometimes when one spouse passes and then you're there burying the second spouse and you suddenly see them side by side, there's a moment, right? There's a moment, or maybe it's at the unveiling when you see both names side by side. There's a certain, I've heard people express it, I'm sure different people experience it different ways, but some people express it as a sense of, you know, now he's with his Sarah. Now they're together again. This is the phrasing, for sure. Because now we have the complete burial of Avraham and Sarah Ishto, his wife. He's back with his wife.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good thing that he purchased the Marat HaMachpelah, because there was no connection afterwards with the person he bought it from by the time he died.
Right.
So he was guaranteed.
Right. He got the
that-
plot for him and for his at the same time that he got
So he was
the
very
plot for his wife.
forward-looking.
Yeah, take care of your plots. That's right. That's the lesson.
The plot thickens.
The plot thickens.
It's a care of life and death.
Right. Yeah. 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 That's good. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about a purchase because that whole
No,
cave
because he
was theirs.
yeah.
And then we go on with the life of Yitzchak. So that's the death of Avraham. So let's ask it this way: what's the death of Avraham about?
Succession.
Succession, the future. There's no hesped, there's no mourning.
Very peaceful.
No, it's very peaceful. Mm-hmm. Still very matter of fact. Mm-hmm.
Vayasef el Amav, I think has a better link.
Vayasef el Amav, he's gathered into his people. So I have to check if that's the first time that phrase
Yes,
is used.
I think so. In the Bible,
Yeah, because Sarah is there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
but Sarah, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So who else is he gathered to?
They were the father of the nation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of missing information in between. Anyway.
Yes, yes,
So
there's missing
these
information.
people is going back to these people.
His future people.
It's not, yeah, so it's not about Abraham's life. It's not about the purchase of the plot. It's reaffirming the plot and saying that both sons are present. Both sons, this is what Rabbi Sachs writes in his book. I mentioned it last week, Not in God's Name. That we're almost misreading the whole book of Breshit when we think that Yitzchak is chosen and Yishmael is rejected. Yishmael is always one of Abraham's children. Yishmael is still the father of nations, and it's not one or the other. Yitzchak has a mission, Yishmael has a different role. And here we have Eila Toldot Yishmael ben Avraham. These are the offspring, the descendants of Yishmael. And we have that recorded in the Torah. So, Rabbi Sachs uses that to say, what are we fighting about? We're stuck in the model of Cain and Abel. And the message of Yitzchak and Ishmael is not that. And the message later of Yaakov and Esav is also not that. Yaakov has to learn that he doesn't have to steal Esav's identity and take over, but rather let Esav be Esav and let Yaakov be Yaakov. It's a beautiful book. So if you have time, pick it up. Yeah.
Wouldn't the deaths of the patriarchs and the deaths of the matriarchs always be kind of subordinated to the main theme of the Torah, which is nation building, and every person's place in that nation building process?
Yes, absolutely.
And so
the role of the matriarchs and patriarchs is beautifully articulated in that way.
So
that it's in the role of nation building.
So more prominence would be given to Rivka, for example, because she has an extremely important role to play in the ongoing story, whereas Sarah, producing Isaac, Isaac
Isaac.
was her role, you
Mhm,
could say,
mhm.
and helping Abraham insinuate himself into, you know,
Right.
I mean, everybody's, it's their role that's more important
So
than their
that's-
self. Like that, we keep,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
we're so used to treating people as individuals, but these are
What
all
role do they
roles
play
that
as characters
they
in
play,
this
yeah.
unfolding drama
Yeah.
of the Jewish story? So absolutely, Sarah has to produce an heir, Yitzchak, but Rivka has 2 children, so she's also involved in choosing between the children.
But we have
She-
to know more about her character, and we do, because.
that comes
Yeah.
later. Exactly. So, but my point there is, Abraham and Sarah have only one child. So even though Abraham has another child with Hagar, there's no, there's a lot of clarity from God. Ki b'Yitzchak yikare lecha zera. Isaac is going to be the continuity of this nation that you've just founded.
He left everything.
But-
He left everything for
But exactly. But when it comes to Yitzchak, he has only one wife, and the one wife has 2 sons. So that's the next scene, right? That's the debate. Which son is it? And he favors Esav, and Rivka favors Yaakov, and of course, mother's intuition wins. But we have that whole drama between, you know, the blessing between the children fighting over that birthright, which is about the continuity of the nation.
But Sarah does have one moment when she is rather critical to the whole story, and that is the rejection of Hagar. If
Yes.
she had, I mean, after all, polygamy was very much part of the culture of that time. So what if she had said, well, all right, and that's your child, and this is, what if they'd been brought up together and given a somewhat equal status? How different
Our world would be.
the story would have been for us. Who knows what it would have been. So she did have her moment.
Sarah did have a
Active.
very active moment. I think that's more a way of demonstrating that the nation goes through Sarah, and if sadly it takes the casting out of Hagar and Ishmael to demonstrate that moment, but Sarah's not choosing between her 2 kids. I mean, it's terrible. It's a terrible story. It's a very difficult story to read. We could do that another time.
Nation building is messy.
Yeah. Yes. Naomi.
I can't remember how to phrase it. It has something to do with Sarah casting of Hagar. Oh, yeah. That I think Abraham was told to listen to his wife.
Yes. Kohl asher tomar lecha Sarah shema bekola. Listen to your wife, Abraham. Yes. So here's another listen to your wife moment. Are you ready? Great segue. Sorry. Isaac. Page 134. This is chapter 27. The beginning of Perek Chaf Zayin. This is not quite it's not a deathbed scene, but it's pretty close. Vayiki zaken Yitzchak. So now we have the word zaken again. Abraham set the tone for all of history. Now people are going to look old and know that they're old and recognize what that takes. So Yitzchak also is old, and his eyesight is weakened, and that's important just because of the story that's about to happen. Right? Why is it important that we know that Isaac can't see? Because he's going to mix up the boys. He's going to be fooled by Yaakov stealing the blessing. I'm just thinking about how much of this story I wanted to actually read, because I want to get. Okay.
You know what's interesting about his eyes dimmed is that we rely, what parent would not recognize their child even if they couldn't see them? I find,
So
the insight versus the
there are different
eyesight,
ways
of
reading. There are different ways of reading that story.
Yeah.
I'm just realizing that
maybe he didn't recognize
I
There's
didn't
potential. It's not that
find
he
the
didn't
place
see it.
where Yitzchak dies. Okay, we'll have to. Gosh, that's really troubling me.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
What's that?
It wasn't, it was his lack of insight, not eyesight.
Yeah, Okay, well, it's really throwing me off.
Yeah,
Um,
or not so.
it's not.
The soup was more important than.
Okay, well, let's. I don't know why I am. It's so interesting. I'm just realizing I don't know where Isaac dies. Huh. Okay. He's old. That part we know. His eyesight is weakened. He calls Esav, and he articulates. Look at verse 2 on page 134. Vayomer hinena zakanti, I have become old. Lo yadati yom moti. So not knowing one's day of death is an awakening for him. I don't know the day that I will die. Because I don't know the day that I will die, I better act now. It's the first time we're seeing that articulated, which is very important. And because I don't know the day that I will die, what do I want to take care of? I want to give my blessing to you, which is my legacy. The blessing is not just a bracha, but a mission. And Yitzchak thinks, I'm going to give it to my older son. That's what we do. Even though he wasn't the older son, but he was the only son of Sarah. So go prepare me this meal, etc., so that, again, the end of verse 4, Ba'avur tivarechecha nafshi b'terem amut, so that I may bless you before I die. So death as a motivator appears in this story. And then here's the drama of Rivka listening in and goes over to Yaakov and quickly prepares a calf instead. Matamim. Vayomer Yaakov says, how will he'll know it's me, etc. I want to skip to the other. There's another reference of death. It's really killing me. Where is he dying? It's killing me. So Isaac. Oh my gosh, I can't post this class because now I don't know where we're going. Isaac.
None of us knows where we're going.
None of us know. So Isaac, after he finds out that he gave the bracha to the wrong son, and he sees Esav is harboring hatred towards Yaakov, and look, verse 41. Vayistom Esav et Yaakov al habracha asher bercho aviv. Esav resents Yaakov. This is page 140. I skipped ahead to the end of this story because this story is amazing, but it's for another time. I want to just go to the ends of life. So Esav thinks to himself, Vayomer Esav bilibo, Yikrivu yemei evel avi, the days of mourning for my father are drawing near, meaning my dad is going to die soon, and then I'll kill my brother. Va'aharga et Yaakov achi. So where?
Page 191.
Oh gosh, thank you. That's why, because it's way up ahead. Thank you. Oh, there they go. Okay. Oh, because it's after they encounter each other again, and they come together. 10 points for you. Okay. So it's because we'll skip ahead to page 190. But it's the death as motivator for Yitzchak to bless his children. Then we got a whole interlude of Yaakov, and we'll go back to the death of Rachel, which is tragic. Yaakov going out, running away from his brother, because his brother, also his father's death, is is not a motivator but a deterrent for Esav to say, I'm not going to kill Yaakov while Dad is alive. But when Dad dies, I'll take care of him. So, so in the meantime, all of this reconciliation happens between the two brothers. Yaakov has gone away. He's worked for 7 years for Rachel, another 7 years because he didn't get Rachel the first time around. He got Leah, and then decides actually in total it was 20 years. He was gone for 20 years. He decides to come back. He appeals to his brother Esav. He doesn't know if Esav's actually going to try and kill him now, but the brothers make up, and then page 190, after the death of Rachel, thank you, Florence, these were now the 12 sons of Yaakov, and verse 27, Yaakov, vayavo Yaakov el Yitzchak aviv mamrei Kiryat Arba. Kiryat Arba is Hebron. That's the Hebron asher garsham Avraham v'Yitzchak, where Abraham and Isaac had been. And now Isaac dies and is going to be buried also in that same plot. The family plot is expanding. Verse 28, Vayihiyu Yemei Yitzchak, the same description, so there's no deathbed. Vayihiyu Yemei Yitzchak me'at shana u'shmonim shana, 180 years. Vayigva Yitzchak vayamot, same phrase as Avraham. He expired and died. Vaye'asef el amav, gathered to his people, zaken usivayamim, the same phrase. He was old, he was satiated, so we didn't get that with Sarah, which only reinforces what? The fact that Sarah died suddenly. It reinforces that midrash. The midrash is not making it up from their imagination, they're making it up based on the text. And vayikberu oto Esav veYaakov banav, also a reuniting and a reconciliation of the children who both bury their father. Okay, so Yitzchak and Yaakov actually have the same deaths. They finish their task of ensuring the future, and they're buried by their feuding children having reconciled. I wanted to spend a couple minutes on the death of Rachel, and then we'll call it a day, okay? It's unfortunately very sad and very brief, but flip back to page 188. There's one interesting thing I wanted to say about Rachel's death. Rachel is in labor. She's had Yosef, and now she's in labor with Benjamin, with Binyamin. The bottom of page 188. She went into labor. Vateled Rachel vatikash belidata. She's having difficulty in the labor, in childbirth. Verse 17. Vayehi behakshota belidata. When she was in the midst of this difficult labor, Vatomer laha meyaledet, the midwife said, Al tir'i ki gam zeh lach ben. Don't worry, don't be afraid, this too will be a son for you. What is she saying? What is the midwife saying to Rachel? I don't know if you're going to make it, but don't worry, you'll get that son. Rachel's whole life has been in competition with Leah. Leah has a son, and another son, and another son, and another son. She has 5 sons. When Rachel finally has a child, what does she name him? Yosef, give me another. She's always trying to catch up. Of course, the irony is that Leah is jealous of Rachel, because Rachel is the one that her husband actually loves. So the baby wars are really about who's favored by the husband and who's favored by God. And don't worry, you're going to have that son. Vayehi b'tzeit nafsha kimeta. In the moment that her soul was departing, it's really hard to read. She is in the midst of her death, and with her last breath, vatikra shemo ben oni, she calls his name the son of my suffering. And her husband in that moment says, enough! Stop giving the kids these names of your suffering, right? Reuven was called, look, I have a son. Reuven. Shimon, God answered me, heard me, and gave me another son. All of these, Levi, Yosef. So, Ben Oni, the son of my suffering, Yaakov says, "Va'aviv karalo Binyamin, the son of the strength of my right hand." Binyamin. Let Binyamin at least live his own life. Poor kid whose mother died in his birth. Vatamat Rachel, and Rachel died. Vatikaver b'derech Ephrata. She died in a place no one was prepared to bury her. So she's buried on the way. B'derech Ephrata hi Beit Lechem, and they do this kind of makeshift burial. Vayitzev. Sorry, I can't read. Vayatzev Yaakov matzeva al kvurata. So he puts this matzeva, this monument, on her grave, and that becomes matzeva kvurat Rachel ad hayom. So Rachel herself is now a destination, and of course the narrative of Rachel's burial place is the narrative of the people of Israel being on the road to exile, and Rachel is crying for her children going off to exile. So Rachel is like this homeless burial, and the death is also unanticipated and tragic. And at least Binyamin rises from those terrible moments, and it can be Ben Yamin, a son of strength, not a son of tragedy. So Rachel is the exception to the rule in this family, which otherwise have a place for burial, have people to mourn them, and ensure that they have continuity before they pass, which is very beautiful, and which is about building this nation and building the next generations of the story. Okay, comment? Yes, two comments, two. Yes, Carol.
Further to where it says Rachel's tomb is a place where men and women shed tears and beg Mother Rachel to intercede with God on their behalf. That reminds me of another religion.
Yeah. There's a fine line between praying to God at the grave of a righteous person and praying to a righteous person at their grave to intercede to God. And it's something that we can struggle with theologically. That is it's a much longer conversation, yes. But we're still praying to God. We're praying to God. We're hoping Rachel's going to help us pray to God. That's what that message has to be. Yes.
But it doesn't say that. It says.
I know. I didn't write that.
I was never aware. It seems to be many years between the time that Isaac's eyes dimmed and he was ready to die until he actually died.
Oh.
What
are the,
like 80 years?
it had to be 20. Had to be 20 years. Because, or at least, it could be more. It doesn't tell us how old Yitzchak was when he discovers that he's old. But he's certainly over 100. But we know that Yaakov then leaves for 20 years and then comes back and then buries his father. So there's at least 20 years there. Yes. Yeah. Rachel and then Terry, and then we'll call it a day.
It says that Ishmael Neisaf Elamav also.
Yeah, it's an expression. It's just Ne'esaf Elamav, he was gathered to his people. It's I think it means you join your ancestors. I don't think it's significant about the brit, the covenant. No, not necessarily. Yeah, Terry.
So, I did join the bat mitzvah group we had past Monday night on Shabbat. And what stuck out in my mind is that from the Torah that you die in childbirth, you don't put candles, nida.
That's it's a terrible teaching.
Yeah.
I mean, not terrible.
So
Rooted in a theology that's very hard. What did Rachel? Basically, you're asking what sin did Rachel do to die early like this? Yeah. It's a much later text. It's the Mishnah, which was written 2,000 years after this is happening. Yeah, it's the rabbis of the Mishnah, I would say, trying to ascribe meaning to something they can't control. And so they see women dying in childbirth, that's something that they can't understand and they can't control and they don't have the science to explain. But they also want to assert the centrality of those mitzvot in a woman's life. The mitzvot of challah, of the mikvah, of the candles. So they put it together as a deterrent or as a motivator. But I don't think we can then anachronistically place that onto the story of Rachel. Yeah, absolutely. That's good. Okay, thanks everyone.